Every party alive. Make you click your face. You will make time let you go. You was fine, never mind. Unpredictable. Fade eye off the calm, doing no one. You will start, go with that like supernova. In the nighttime, hit a hotline. Sharing secrets, you was really was part your life. Basic bullets, get no bullets. Does your wife know you're begging for my notice? Promise you're the same. Running for the magic. Show you like my vibe. Pass my candy on my wrist. Bad habits. Now sit down, you can have it.
This is Kelly from What's the Obsession. Thanks for taking time to watch this video. Welcome back to What's the Obsession, where we deep dive into answers. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the channel members. I appreciate you guys so much. If you'd like to become a channel member, the link is below. And to everyone in the live chat tonight or watching the replay, thank you so much for your support.
Each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.
Hey, hello everybody, and welcome back to What's the Obsession live stream and chat. And tonight we are discussing the Idaho 4 case, the tragedy that happened on November 13th, 2022, that took the lives of 4 beautiful young University of Idaho students, Kelly Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. Everything we do in this channel is in the spirit of finding justice for those victims and a greater sense of peace for their families who our hearts go out to. We absolutely cannot imagine what they are all going through right now. So welcome to everybody. I'm so glad you're here. Come on in. For those of you who are just coming in, welcome. You haven't missed anything yet. We just got started, and I appreciate all of you. So, and thank you so much, especially to the moderators that are here. You guys are absolutely amazing. And yes, McJ, we are going to be doing a Chris Watts live pretty soon. And I promise all the moderators, I will give you some advance notice via email on that, because I know that those can get particularly hairy. So hi, Rusty. Welcome. How are you doing? Hey, Suspicious. Kevin, so glad you're here. Kent Valley, welcome. How are you doing? No. How are you doing? Hey, I don't know why that made me laugh. Cute name. Kaza 67. Yeah, it is such a sad case. Absolutely, isn't it? And hi, Amy Terry. How are you doing? Awesome. Good. I'm glad the sound is okay. Everybody let me know if the sound is okay. I don't have my earbuds in this evening because honestly, I just couldn't find both of them. See, sometimes that happens, right? Okay. Hey, JD, nice to see you. How are you doing? And let's see, I'm just going to scroll up a little bit more here. And it's Mimi too. Hey, how's it going? It's Mimi too. Hey, Candy Prim, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Melissa Davis, from Alabama, one of the states I've never been to. And McJ, awesome. You're so wonderful. Thank you, McJ. You are always the first one started up alive, and I really appreciate that. Hey, Lisa R., how are you doing? Great to see you as well. Everybody's great to see you. Hey, Mrs. B, how's it going? Nice to see you. And I'm just going to go up a little more. If I miss you, I do apologize. Just say hello, and I'll say hello back. Hey, Sunflower Dragon, how's it going? Ara, so happy you're here as well. Sherry Revels, welcome. How are you? And let's see. Life Giver. Well, hopefully you're still here. I think it started right after you asked the question. Let's see. And Kay Braze, welcome. So glad to see you as well. And me. Carrie H, hi, how are you doing? Edward, how's it going, my friend? Nice to see you. Exit Screaming, nice to see you as well. Lisa Baker, Laura Williams, Angel D, how are you? I see everything worked out. Wink, wink. Glad to hear that. I did get your email. Didn't get a chance to write back. Sorry about that. Chick 56, I'm so glad you're here. I haven't seen you in a while either. All right, I'm going to get back down to the current comments so we can get started. Jody is cool. Welcome, my darling. How are you? DC Primetime, how's it going, my friend? Susan Camille is here. Welcome, Susan Camille. How are you doing? I love the name Camille. Such a pretty name. Wicked Mania. Mana? Am I saying that right? I'm sorry if I'm not, but welcome. And let's see. And Pretty Insane. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. I'm so glad to see all of you. So we do know in the, Idaho 4 cases, I'm going to call it, we already acknowledged the victims. Sometimes we call it the Idaho 4 case too much. We don't ever want to forget the victims and their names. I think on this channel, we do a really good job of honoring them and making a point of making all of this about them. So when I do say Idaho 4, let's just have that understanding, right? Hi, Sabrina. How are you doing? Just saw you come in as well. And also, let's see. Oh, maybe that was it. Okay. And I don't know how to say this name, but welcome. How are you doing? I'm very glad you're here. So there's a couple things that I want to discuss tonight. We are going to watch a little bit of it was one of Nancy Grace's broadcasts. And I know some people have opinions about Nancy Grace, and we've gone into some discussions on this. I, at various times in my life, have loved her, couldn't stand her, whatever the case may be. But as far as this case goes, I think she has covered some interesting angles. She does have some interesting guests on in this particular broadcast that we're going to take a little bit of a look at. Her guest was Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough, I've mentioned him a lot lately for some reason, but he is the creator of the YouTube channel, The Interview Room. If you haven't checked it out, it's a really great channel. He is a retired homicide detective. He has investigated over 300 homicides. He is the founder of the Cold Case Foundation, and he has a pretty amazing resume. So Chris McDonough, just a few days, well, it was about a week after the tragedy occurred, went to Moscow, Idaho to 1122 King Road and around the neighborhood to kind of retrace the steps that the students had taken as far as we knew at that time. I'll try to come up with a link to that particular episode that he put out. It was, I thought really good, really comprehensive. Chris McDonough is in fact the person that found the glove that was outside the house that is now known to be one of the locations of one of 3 unknown male DNA samples that were found on the premises. The other 2 were inside the residence. This glove that was found kind of outside the house, he brought it to the attention of investigators. They took pictures of it. They processed it, rightfully so. I think they absolutely should have, but I think, in my opinion, there, if you see the glove, I think it's a very small chance that it was involved in this crime. So I just want to say that up front, because in my opinion, due to everything I just said, in my mind, when I think about this, there really are 2 unknown male DNA samples that were left behind in the residence from unknown contributors that existed along with the DNA sample, the single source male DNA sample that was found on the button snap of the knife sheath. So there have been a lot of questions about these additional sources of single source male DNA, why they hadn't been fully processed and whatnot. So I just want to explore that idea along with Bryan Kohberger's criminal past. So when I say his criminal past, how many of you know what I am referring to? So Bryan Kohberger does, have an arrest record. I won't say anything more about that. I almost kind of forgot about it. And when somebody had mentioned it recently, I was like, what are you talking about? Oh my gosh. Did we just learn about this? And I remembered, oh, right. Okay. That's what that was. Yeah. Gotcha. Hey, mommy issues, ASMR. Sorry, that took me a bit to get those letters out. Well, okay, this is a good point. Mommy issues. I lost 10 gloves outside over the years. Unless DNA is on the knife sheath, who cares? So, that is a really good point that we have made on this channel. I know Angel D makes this point really well. Hi, Angel D. That, if you have these various sources of DNA that are found in the area of the crime scene, and we're going to go into a little bit later, perhaps why they didn't fully test the other sources of DNA. Although, guys, we don't know that. If you just had to pick one, wouldn't you pick the one that was found on the knife sheath that matches the knife, that is consistent with the injuries on the 4 victims, that was found partially underneath one of the victims' bodies upon the bed, where 2 of the deceased victims were found by, the person that originally found them and law enforcement. I mean, it's kind of common sense at play here. So everybody, if you can just take a moment and please click like while I am getting this video up and running, I would really appreciate it. Yeah, and DC Primetime makes a point. Single source means one contributor. It means that DNA sample was contributed from one individual. And we do know that those additional sources of single source male DNA from unknown contributors were tested to some degree, because we know A, that they're single source, and B, that they're from a male. So it's not as though it was just acknowledged, okay, DNA found here, and absolutely nothing was done about it. So to say that just isn't accurate or fair. Hi, Joan Bradley. How are you doing? Nice to see you. All right, so here we go. And please, again, check in with the audio. Oh, is the audio okay, McJ? What's going on? Is the audio okay? Can you guys hear me? Is this about my audio? Who's texting me? Nope. Oh, this is somebody in a Facebook group about the Murdaugh murders. Oh, geez. Let's see here. Is audio okay, y'all? Okay. All right. Hi, Dwayne Hennon. How are you doing? Yeah, and Amy Terry just says, start from the victims and work your way out. Absolutely, Watts the Obsession. No reason to check the one in the kitchen when there is one on the sheath. Yeah, or even if maybe there would be a reason to process it. And again, we don't know that it wasn't processed, but certainly the one that is on the knife sheath underneath one of the victims upon the bed where 2 of the victims were found is going to be the number 1 suspect. Suspect meaning I'm suspicious of it, DNA sample, you're going to want to test, So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mrs. B says, I'm in the best mood ever because a 9-year-old girl from New York was found. I've needed some good news from one of these cases for a very long time. I totally agree that it's wonderful news, and let's just take a moment to acknowledge that. And actually, Morrow Lake State Park is where she was found. It's less than an hour and a half from here. So I was actually going to this weekend head out that way if she wasn't found. I don't know if there's any interest in that now that she was found, but it is pretty close by. And hey, Brandy Wine and True Crime, wonderful to see you, my friend. So glad you're here. Hi, Crime Lies and Videotape. How are you doing? Crime Lies and Videotape says, I don't think that they could plant the DNA because on the 13th, when the sheath was discovered, bagged and tagged, they didn't even know who Bryan was yet. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the many points that we can make towards the idea that, this likely wasn't planted. Now, I am going to be giving my opinion in this live stream this evening. Sometimes I do, sometimes I just try to remain more objective. But as we are, seeing more of the evidence and more of these conversations are coming up, I do have some pretty strong opinions only towards a reason of staying grounded and rooted in fact and evidence-based everything as we're discussing this case. In my opinion, there really is no reason for super wild conspiracy theory right now, and we can talk a little more about that later. Hi, Bullish in Seattle. How are you doing? Nice to see you. Yeah. If y'all watch Crime Circus, he's had some wild stuff he's found so far. I think he's had some wild stuff that he's found, and I also think that there are some very wild things that he speculates about. So I think we can say both. So that's just my opinion.
It never ends with quadruple murder suspect Bryan Kohberger. In the last days, his attorneys are challenging DNA evidence produced by the state.
Wait a minute. I feel like that was starting to buffer, and I don't know why. Just give me a minute here. Yeah. Hi, Princess Sarah. Welcome. How are you doing? And mommy issues. Definitely. Some people definitely think that. And, I think he makes some good points every now and then. But I honestly think that there are several other channels that are, I don't want to say, but catering far more to outlandish conspiracy theories, even than Crime Circus right now. But again, we can visit that a little bit later. Okay. Please Nance. Come through from
DNA from men were found at the crime scene. We understand that there's DNA from 2 males, not Kohberger, inside the home on King Road, and DNA evidence, male DNA found on a glove found outside the home. I recall seeing a practically frozen mitten in the snow outside the home. I don't think that had anything to do with the murders themselves. But this is going to be an attack on the state's case, and it will probably turn into an attack on the victims themselves. Joining me right now, Chris McDonough, star of The Interview Room on YouTube, also director at Cold Case Foundation. You can find him at coldcasefoundation.org. But for today, his relevance is because he has investigated over 300 homicide cases. We have the attack on the state's DNA evidence. We have other attacks ongoing, claiming that the police, LA law enforcement, had tunnel vision on Kohberger, thereby shutting out investigation of any other potential.
So I'm hearing that there's some buffering. So just give me a second. I'm just going to close out everything else I have running, okay? Just give me 1 second here. Let's see, close that down. Yeah, you know what? I had a lot of programs running. I was doing some work for work just a little while ago. And I'm a special educator and behavioral therapist, for those of you who do not know that. So when I talk about things from that perspective as a behavioral therapist, which I often do, and now you know that about me if you didn't. Test manager, close. And all right. Give me just one more second here so I can close up everything I got going on that we don't need to be looking at right now. So you're not buffering. I mean, so our girl Nancy is not buffering. And again, for those of you who, people have very strong opinions about Nancy Grace. And as I said before, I have throughout my life as well, too, in varying opinions. But I think to this point, she has some, I think there's some meaty stuff here to discuss. So that's what we'd be doing. All right, close out. Close out. Oops. Let's see, close that. Close that. All right, Nance, don't buffer.
Suspect. And we also have now rising to the forefront a prior criminal arrest by Kohberger. Up until now, we have been told that he was lily white, pure as a nun. But now we're learning that's not entirely true. You know what? Before we hit the DNA attack, let me go to Chris McDonough joining me. Chris, the reality is that he is not the saint the defense has painted him out to be. What do you make of his prior arrest?
Well, Nancy, I mean, and thank you for having me. I'm so grateful. It just goes into what we've been talking about as we've discussed Bryan Kohberger. We're going to start seeing information that will provide itself into the public arena about his previous behaviors and his previous interests. And obviously now that this has come forward, we had the image initially of this young man, who was struggling through school, wanted to become a police cadet. Yet now this arrest, surfaces, and you start thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, maybe he wasn't as pristine as the defense has, been presenting through the motions. I think it's fascinating that the defense has gone on, the offense here by utilizing verbiage such as, these reports that contain exculpatory information. I mean, you as a trial attorney, a very successful prosecutor, what sticks out to you? I mean, when we start seeing this type of stuff, present itself.
Are you talking about the prior arrest, or are you talking about the DNA challenge?
Both.
Well, with the DNA challenge, I would expect it. I mean, now that we know other male DNA is at the scene, of course they're going to challenge it. But what matters to me in that vein is, where was the DNA found? Was it found on one of the murder victims? If that, it's highly incriminating toward that other male. Or was it found on the coffee pot downstairs? Was it found on the door handle? Was it found on a light switch? That means nothing, as opposed to Kohberger's DNA found on the sheath of the murder weapon in the bed with Maddie Mogan. That's damning. So that's one thing. The other DNA attack is on the process of how the DNA comparison was made. Number one, there's nothing at all out of order with the DNA testing. It was done pursuant to lab regimen. So that challenge is going to fail. The defense is all.
Now, I don't know if she goes into, I can't remember if she goes into talking about exactly what she means there when she says the DNA testing was done pursuant to lab regimen requirements. So with the investigative genetic genealogy, and this has been spoken about by, Gabriella, oh my gosh, I wanted to say Vasquez, but that's not it. Vargas, I knew it started with a V. And others who have done a lot of work in investigative genetic genealogy. This is a very upcoming and budding area of forensic investigation. And they are only going to be, each person who is working that investigative genetic genealogy process is only going to be looking at one sample at a time. And again, we can revisit exactly why they say that is towards the end of this stream, but they're not going to pick up every possible sample of DNA that you can find within a 500-yard radius and embark on this investigative genetic genealogy process for a number of reasons. And again, we can discuss that further in just a little bit. I think it's kind of an interesting topic.
Also challenging the state trying to keep Kohberger's family tree private, so members of his family are not pilloried by the press and others. But there are two DNA matches in this case. Number one, when Kohberger was followed all the way from WSU, where he was a PhD student, home for Thanksgiving with his family in Poconos, the police watched the home. They obtained abandoned DNA at that time. That abandoned DNA was from Kohberger's father. It was matched to the DNA at the crime scene on the knife sheath. And that DNA match proved, with a huge statistical number, that the donor of the DNA on the murder weapon knife sheath had to be the biological son of Bryan Kohberger's father. Had to be. And
Yep.
Kohberger's father only had one biological son. So you've got that DNA match. Then they take the DNA, now that they figured out it's him, and they build a genealogical tree. And they now trace the DNA on the sheath directly to Kohberger from a buccal swab. DNA taken from his saliva, from his mouth. So what I'm saying is there's 2 DNA tests damning him. They're not going to win on the DNA challenge. I'm very, very curious about this prior arrest. Now, we know the prior arrest was back in 2014 for stealing his sister's cell phone. And it was Kohberger's own father, Michael Kohberger, that turned him in. He called police and said that Bryan Kohberger had been struggling with drugs, we believe heroin. He had a drug addiction. He had just gotten out of rehab and rejoined the family. And one of the first things he did when he got back in with the family is steal his sister's phone. Now, according to documents, he paid a friend $20 to take him to a mall where he sells his sister's iPhone worth $400 for $200. What? For more drugs? For what? Why was he stealing a phone and selling it behind his parents' back, stealing from his sister? He's arrested. He's charged with theft, and he took advantage of a first offender program. And I've granted it myself to first offenders, where if you complete your probation or a course or your community service hours, and it's your first offense and it's a misdemeanor, it can be, quote, expunged, erased. And that's what he did. And that is why it wasn't found originally. And everyone thought he had no criminal history. Well, he does. Not just a criminal history, but a history deriving out of a drug habit and preying on his own family. That's what we know right now. And I want to find out from you, a veteran homicide detective, what that means to you.
Well, it's interesting that the sister, when he was first arrested, they had the impression just before the arrest for the homicides here that one of the sisters thought, well, he did it. And, there was a question within the family, and she goes out to check the car, remember? And so this is probably one of the incidences where if somebody has a drug addiction problem, we used to call it chasing the needle, remember? Where if they're, injecting heroin, every 4 to 6 hours, they're going to need that drug. And so they go to any length possible. In this case, obviously, he steals his sister's cell phone, sells it for half price. It's probably to support that addiction process or problem that he has. But now, if we move that forward, that pre-incident behavior tells us that he is capable of criminal behavior, okay, to a point where he will take it within the sanctuary of his own personal family. And so as this case starts to unfold even further, it won't surprise me, and I'm sure it won't surprise you, if other incidences, start to surface where the prosecution may already have those interviews down somewhere, and that's going to tell us, about the other side of him, the secret life of Bryan Kohberger. But I think we're going to see incidents where people are going to say, mostly women, are going to come forward and say, look, this guy was creepy at this party. He weirded me out, et cetera, where he became possessive of women even prior to, if he is our guy, which it sounds like the DNA is telling us it is. There's a whole bunch more behavior that's going to come forward that is going to be not connected to drugs and not connected to that addiction, but more about maybe a sexual side of his personality.
More intrinsic to Kohberger himself, not necessarily about an addiction, but about his personality. Another thing regarding that, um, Chris McDonough, is that most of this evidence, if not all of it, will never come in front of a jury.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's fascinating that the defense is utilizing motions to start planning a narrative to the public. And this is
Okay,
why
what do you mean by that?
I think, well, the gag order is in place for the court. And so now we get two new attorneys involved who, rightfully so, as part of the death penalty team for the defense. We get two new attorneys involved, and immediately they start writing, motions about the DNA evidence. And it's crafted very, very well, by lawyers who are DNA experts, both of them. But what it's doing is it's creating a narrative within the public. So, that's kind of getting around the gag order that the court has. They're utilizing the public records to create a narrative, which I think is fascinating. It's actually pretty smart.
Just thinking through everything you're saying, I'm thinking through the fact that he stole from his sister. He had a friend involved giving him a ride to sell the phone, that his father turned him in. I'm thinking about that dynamic and that family dynamic and how that's playing into what we know right now. The jury, most like that. This comes on the heels of an announcement by the Sikh penalty. That gives heightened scrutiny to everything that the state does. I'm thinking about that DNA evidence, Chris McDonough, where it was found is so critical. For instance, if it was found on the glove that you alerted police about, you said, hey, there's a glove out here, come get it. That may be by a stranger cutting through the yard. That doesn't mean anything. But if DNA is found inside one of the victim's rooms or on the bed sheets or on the victim themselves, that would be damning. But we don't know where this other DNA came from, the other two male DNAs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is, it's the elephant in the living room for the defense team, because this is a huge piece of with that DNA on the snap of that knife sheet. The other DNA, I think, to your point, Nancy, can be explained very easily. I mean, we have the body camera of the officers responding to the parties at the house. The narrative that potentially these girls, were social butterflies. That doesn't make them, bad individuals, right? I mean, it's college. That's what kids do. And they, this was a house that there were very attractive, girls there, and these young men would come over and visit, and they would, sometimes even leave the house and let the house, party itself. And so that other DNA is not going to be, in my opinion, very difficult to overcome, because, you have so many kids going in and out of their home. However, Bryan Kohberger's DNA on that sheet underneath her body tells us, or beside her body, tells us a whole bunch about, him being in that house. That is a really high bar to overcome, but, you're the expert.
Well, hold on right there. That's another issue, and a good issue for the state. It's one thing for a friend, a study partner, a boyfriend to have their DNA in the home. But why is Kohberger's DNA in the home? He isn't rightfully there, much less on the knife sheath. And we can't claim, this is the knife he looked at a store, at a knife shop, and then somebody else bought it and they're the killer. No, because of that Amazon purchase receipt. Describe that, Chris McDonough. I would say
Yeah, I mean,
that's the fly in the ointment right there, in addition to the DNA. Explain.
no, that's a solid point, Nancy. I agree. And, it's such a low tech piece of evidence, right? Where he orders it and, it's delivered. Now there is a similar knife from Amazon connected to Bryan Kohberger, according to the reports that we're hearing. But let's go back to other low tech information.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Wait. Yes, I'll go back with low tech information, but I just want to be clear. Police have obtained an Amazon receipt showing Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife and sheath from Amazon 7 months before the murders. That's damning.
And now this is also interesting because we know with some recently released revelations about this case and the search warrants, that these search warrants were actually expanded to make an inquiry into his searches. And gosh, I can bring that up again. I read about it in detail during the last live stream that gave so much information about what he was looking for on Amazon, what was on his wish list, what did he actually view but didn't buy, what were his saved searches, what was he looking at when he was on YouTube, what was he looking at when he just generally Googled in the shopping section of the Google searches that everybody has an option to use. I mean, they gathered so much information about his search behavior while he was on the internet in general and while he was on Amazon. It was absolutely incredible. And I'm sure once we learn about that information during the trial, that information is going to be like lay him out on the floor damning. That is just my opinion based on what we know thus far.
Because he did have a knife matching the knife found with his DNA on it. That's pretty damning. Okay, now back to low-tech info. What were you saying?
Yeah, so you would expect now the defense to produce that knife and sheath. So I think the prosecution could put them in a prisoner's dilemma, for lack of a better term, where,
in other words, you're saying, if that's not your knife that you bought on Amazon, then where is your knife?
Yeah, bring it to court and let's put a number on it and put it in evidence. And it won't surprise me if some knife does show up, quite frankly, with a sheath that they've purchased post-incident, just for the theater effect, which that's good lawyering. But in this situation,
also unethical to fabricate evidence. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so let's go back also to some of the other information that we have. We have the vehicle, a Hyundai Elantra that's described. It's seen on video from that neighbor's video camera the morning of the homicide. We also see it at the gas station going by. And so the police were onto him from the car, i.e. just the car description. But the low-tech piece of this is that officer at Washington State University who took the initiative to start looking for that Hyundai through all the parking records at the university. And lo and behold, they come across a Hyundai that belongs to Bryan Kohberger. And next thing you know it, they have a name. That name, very low tech, leads them to the DNA.
You're right. Can you imagine that officer? A campus officer at WSU, Washington State University, hears about, hey, they're looking for a Whitey launcher. So Washington State is about 10 miles-ish from the murder scene. So he, on his own, just starts looking through the records, and he finds a new launcher registered to Bryan Kohberger. Because if you live on student housing, you have to register your car and a lot of other information. So he goes driving around. He hooks up with another officer. They start driving around, and lo and behold, as you said, there it is, sitting right there in the parking lot, right at his second floor apartment, right out in front of it. And that is where it all began. Right there. Very low tech, Chris McDonough, you're right. Then they figure out that he's about to leave for Thanksgiving break, and they follow him all the way to the Poconos. And that is where they get the dad's DNA. And that DNA matches back to the knife sheath. Then they do another DNA match. It's Kohberger, dead in the water, and the case goes on. You're right.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
low tech.
Yep. And you know, being in that, I know that feeling when you get this, you know, piece of information as a case agent, you go, okay, well, who's this guy? Who is this guy? And, you know, let's get on this quickly. And lo and behold, you know, that chain of events started this domino effect pretty quickly to where the surveillance, you know, the feds get involved, you know, interstate because it's in Pennsylvania. You know, you get the state police involved back there. And, you know, you start doing interviews behind the scenes on the phone, you know, hey, we've got this Honda, you know, this white Honda Elantra out here. And, you know, we're investigating, you know, the case, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell us a little bit about your guy out there? What do you know about him? Okay. And that whole flow of information starts to come. So now then we see it's at the trial side of things, and you've had hundreds of cases, Nancy. You know, you're a brilliant attorney in the courtroom. I can only imagine, you know, watching people get eviscerated by your skill. But you know more than anybody, the last thing you want is information presented on your desk and we're missing something from the investigative side, right? You want it all. If it's good, if it's bad, just give it to me. I'll deal with it in the courtroom. And so where I'm going with this point is now we start seeing these motions start to come forward about the officers involved. And, you know, it's typical,
wait, yes. Let me clarify what you just said. You're right. Number one, what Chris McDonough is talking about is a flurry of motions that have just been filed, questioning all sorts of information, questioning the officers who worked on the case, their histories, their training. Have they ever had a complaint? Can I ask you something, Chris McDonough? Have you ever called the cable company and said, guys, I just watched the most incredible movie on Amazon Prime, and I just want to thank you for doing such a great job as a cable carrier? Have you ever said that? Ever?
I haven't.
Okay. Whenever there's a problem, I bet you get on the horn with cable, right? You got my cables out.
Yes.
Fix it. Okay.
Yes.
Same thing with police officers. The only people that call in is when they say, hey, he was really rude to me, or she pulled me over for no reason, or she did that, did this, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe some of them are true about that. There's going to be complaints on every officer, just like every cable TV in this country goes out and somebody gets a complaint. It happens. So the defense wants every complaint, the training records, everything on every officer that worked on this case. And they want a lot more. They want the genealogical tree data. They want navigational data on the car, because that means they're going to challenge the state's navigational data and the cell phone data showing that he took that circuitous route leaving the home to get to his place the night of the murders. But you brought up the cops. Let's go with that. What does that mean to you? Why are they wanting training records of all the officers on the case, even their training records before they were even a cop?
Well, yes, and that's character reference evidence, right? They want to impeach these officers on something if those officers take the stand to testify on the people's case. And so I think it's important for your audience to understand that when you go to the police academy, they immediately start to keep records. And there are 3 types of records. There's basic, intermediate, and advanced. And it's usually through an accreditation like post, in California where I did my time as in homicide. We had post, which is the Peace Officer Standards of Training. And those records are kept by your department. And they're separate from the public's, to your point, Nancy, the public coming in and saying, hey, this officer was, unfriendly to me, and I want to file talk to a supervisor or something. And, sometimes officers get written in their record, he was rude, et cetera. I counseled him, et cetera, which is no big deal. I mean, that happens. That's life. We make mistakes. Police make mistakes. But in the training records, those are controlled typically by in California, the California Department of Justice. So DOJ oversees those training records. But there's a copy kept at the agency. And that just basically, tells everybody, look, I went to this school, this school, this school.
But in those training records, won't it say something like, this trainee is too aggressive, or this trainee screwed up X, Y, or Z? Why don't they just get the kindergarten records out and say, hey, when he was 3 years old, Officer White picked his nose in kindergarten. What about that? I mean, who knows what's going to be in the training records? They're really digging deep here. So that's what they're after, anything that could somehow discredit one of the cops on this case. But they're also demanding additional cell phone record data and FBI forensic reports on the white Hyundai. What are they going to do with FBI reports on the Hyundai? What's that all about? Is it about evidence found or not found in the car, or is it about the tracking system?
Well, I think it's both. And it's also, I think they're going to attack the fact that they had the wrong year initially. When, the initial reporting came out, it was a different year than what actually, Kohberger owned.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. They're missing the big point. It is a Hyundai, and it is white.
And it is an Elantra, and it is his.
And it is, exactly. But you know what? You got the year wrong. You got the year wrong.
Got the year wrong. Okay. This is going to go on and on. These attacks on the state's evidence have just begun. We wait as the case unfolds. Goodbye. Thanks, Chris.
All right. And thank you, Nancy and Chris McDonough of the interview room. So, that's what they had to say about that. So I'm going to actually provide the link to the panel here in chat if anybody would like to come up and discuss anything that we've heard, or, what you think about the, other single source male DNA samples that were found in the residence, or the one that was found around the residence. Again, it was that glove that was discovered by Chris McDonough, we just heard from on Nancy Grace. When he was on the scene about a week later, Chris McDonough, former homicide detective and founder of the Cold Case Foundation, he brought it to the attention of the investigators. According to him, they took pictures of it, they processed it, and, so that's all part of history now. Do you guys think that it is problematic that those other single source DNA samples from an unknown contributor exist? Or do you think that things have been done correctly? That would be the question here. Let's see here. And I'm checking out chat. Whoa, I got way behind there. Let me come back down to current times. There we go. I don't know if I put this right one in before. Okay, let's see. Oh, come on. Nobody wants to talk this evening? Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so Crime Lies and Videotape says, sometimes people get things wrong and it takes the second set of eyes to get it correct. That could have happened with the first ID of the Elantra by the expert. Well, as it was explained, by as it was partially explained before the gag order was in place, and then it was supplementally explained by experts not having to do with a direct investigation, that upon first looking at that footage of what they had identified as the suspect's vehicle, you guys all know how most security camera footage is from wherever you get it. It's far away, it's grainy, it's very difficult to decipher any details in that picture. We all know this to be true. So according to, those who are in the know, it was not until they actually sent some of the video samples to the FBI labs that have the highest degree of technology in Quantico, Virginia, where everything, of super high importance having to do with the FBI goes down. And they were able to use the advanced technology that they have to hone in more closely on, well, first of all, getting a clear picture, and therefore then being able to identify more precisely the make, model, and all that of the car. Patrick Larry, hi, how you doing? Says law enforcement have to be reasonably certain that those DNA profiles are the perp, or it's a Fourth Amendment illegal search violation to identify them. Okay, so you're saying that the other DNA samples that were found in the residence that maybe were or were not processed, we still do not know that for sure. That if there was no compelling reason for law enforcement to believe that those DNA samples came from the perpetrator, they could not be further processed because that would be an infraction of someone's Fourth Amendment right. So this is what you're saying? Very interesting, because I don't even know if I had heard that or thought of it in that way, but I mean, that rings certainly to be possibly true to me. King Scarlet News says, I think law enforcement did their job. Mm-hmm. Oh no, there's an active shooter where? Let's see. Oh gosh, there's an active shooter at Morganton University in Baltimore. Oh no, God, that's terrible. Oh my gosh. I hope that situation certainly gets resolved without any casualties. Oh no. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, welcome to everybody who is joining. So glad you're here. I echo that sentiment. If you could all please click like, I very much appreciate it. It just, y'all know, do that YouTube thing, And I will put the linked panel up one more time. If no one wants to come up and talk tonight, if you guys are all feeling a little shy, that is a-okay. But I'm going to give you just another opportunity here. We all want to know what you think. Let's see. Stacy T, welcome Stacy T. How are you? Says not only did they change the year of the car, they also changed the time of the crime. Well, I think that they did zero in on the time of the crime, but as I went back and looked at initial reports, which is something I just did in the past couple of weeks, I put a couple of videos out about this. They initially estimated the time of the crime as being between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., which is pretty damn close, right? So, I don't think initially from the go, they had it too far off, right? DB Table says, Amy, it kind of makes me wonder why, or is everyone just assuming it is the glove that Chris found? You mean that has one of the DNA samples on it? Okay, well, we do know that he found a glove, right? And I guess, has it been stated that we do know that it was a glove that one of the DNA samples was found on? Has it been stated that it was the one that he found? I guess now that you asked that question, and thank you for asking that question, I don't know if explicitly has been stated. So maybe that is an assumption that has been made. I think it is important to point those things out. And thank you very much, Patrick Larry, for reinforcing the question that I had asked about law enforcement having to be reasonably certain that a DNA sample is associated with a crime in order to test it. And Patrick Larry states that, yes, that is the law. Well, it is important that we follow the law, because in the law, supposedly by following the law is where all of our rights are respected, right? And then Cami has a very different opinion, saying terrible investigation from the beginning. What makes you say that, Cami? Oh, and again, I didn't post that. There's a link to come up on panel. If anybody wants to come up and state your opinion, please do. We'd love to hear from you. Tons of gloves might for people walking through. Right. Yeah. I mean, you will find that in winter, right? You'll find like gloves and mittens and hats and yeah, all over the place. Yeah. I mean, I've said before, I live in a climate, I'm in upstate New York, but it's a climate very much like Moscow, Idaho. And yeah, and that certainly rings true for me here too. Exit Screaming says, I think things were done correctly and the defense is desperate. You know, and I mean, that certainly is the idea that I personally have been getting from the defense, that they're just kind of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. I know that there are varying opinions here. Some people think that they're absolutely brilliant. Some people have more of the opinion like I just stated. I think, you know, as I explained before regarding Bethany Funk's, you know, possible exculpatory evidence. Actually, you know what? I just want to talk about that for a minute because this keeps coming up and I think it's good to just sort of settle a point here. Excuse my sniffling. I just, as some of you know, just got over COVID. I'm still having a little bit of a struggle with it. All right. So that was in, let's see, let me get right back to the time that would be going on. Let's see, where is that motion to file? Let me do it like this. All right. Sorry, I just got to get into my files here. All right. See, let me download this so we can. I'm just making this so you can see it a little bit better here. There we go. All right. Well, I guess it doesn't matter so much if you can. I'll read it to you like I always do. You know how much I love reading. All right. Oh, nope. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I'm looking for the document that preceded the one that I'm looking at right now. Okay, I found it. Okay, I can only find her response. I wanted the original motion though. All right, I think I got it here. All right, not the best copy, but it'll do. New. Okay, let me share this with y'all. So this is going back to, and I'm going to tie this in here, the motion that was filed by the defense to compel Bethany Funk's testimony, okay? Whoops, I shared the wrong one, darn it. Here we are, okay. Stop sharing, where is that? Okay, so County of Latah, Richard, I don't even know how to say his last name, Bianetti, Batanti, I'm not sure. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. I probably am. Don't need to hear about it. I know I'm wrong. Being first duly sworn upon oath, deposes and says, I'm a criminal investigator hired by the defense to assist in representation of Bryan Kohberger. I was asked by appointed counsel Ann.C. Taylor to investigate the alleged incident which led to the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. The death took place on in a 3-story home. There are 2 bedrooms on each floor, bathrooms on each floor, and a kitchen, dining room, and living room on the middle floor. Is there a bathroom on the first floor? I don't think there is. Anyway, Mr. Kohberger is alleged to have entered the house around 4 a.m. while 6 people were sleeping or / present, killing 4 people in 2 separate rooms. The people killed were located in 2 bedrooms, one on the 2nd floor and the other on the 3rd floor. Bethany Funk's bedroom was on the 1st floor. The other surviving roommate's bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Bethany Funk was interviewed by police on several occasions. She disclosed things she heard and things she saw. Bethany Funk was present at the home 8 hours later when the police were called and arrived at the scene, discovering the homicides. And then just let me get to the 2nd page here. I'm not going to share it. I'm just going to read it short. Come on. During the course of my investigation, it became known to me that Bethany Funk has information material to the charges against Mr. Kohberger. Portions of the information Ms. Funk has is exculpatory to the defendant. Ms. Funk's information is unique to her experience and cannot be provided by another witness. Bethany Funk resides in the state of Nevada and it's necessary to subpoena this witness because this witness testimony is material and necessary to this case. So I have, of course, shared with you guys what I have been told by some students in University of Idaho that I've been in contact with for, well, almost since this tragedy occurred, that they believe that it is known among that community what that exculpatory evidence is. Regardless, I very firmly believe the reason that, first of all, 2 things. Number 1, the reason that this motion is written by someone other than Ann Taylor is due to the fact that, as we have discussed before, it is an attorney's duty to not just throw everything other than the kitchen sink in their motions and responses, just, to see if they can manufacture or build a story that is going to create the best defense. The only defense must be grounded in evidence. They can't make shit up, in other words. I firmly do not believe that Bethany Funk was in possession of any kind of exculpatory evidence, because it is my personal belief, and this is just my belief, that there really isn't any exculpatory evidence to be witness of or in possession of at this point in time when this motion was filed. The court and the world were waiting on Bryan Kohberger's alibi, which had not yet been filed. And on this channel, in chat, and in discussions about this case all over the place, the question was asked, if the man is innocent, why in God's name has he not filed an alibi yet? Why has he not submitted an alibi? Oh my gosh. if I didn't do this and I was committed of this or any other crime, the first thing I would do is give my alibi in defense of myself, because God forbid anybody think that I committed such an atrocity, right? So, I firmly believe, and I think this is really supported by the behaviors and the filings of the defense and the timing in which certain things were submitted to the court, primarily Bryan Kohberger's alibi, that they were trying to compel Bethany Funk's testimony, which of course we know never happened because the grand jury was convened, the secret grand jury was convened, therefore making this portion of the pretrial hearing null and void and completely not necessary or relevant or possible. That Bethany Funk, her testimony, her experience, and what she might bring to the table was the biggest wild card in the game for Bryan Kohberger's defense and in the eyes of Ann Taylor. So before she could put forth an alibi in Bryan Kohberger's defense, she needed to know if Bethany Funk's testimony was going to directly oppose or expose the fact that that alibi that was submitted by the defense was bogus. And I mean, that is really one of the worst things that you could do in defense of a defendant, facing these charges, is to put forth an alibi that a witness is going to come on the stand and say, for X, Y, and Z reasons, and here's my sworn testimony, that cannot possibly be true, right? So I know that a lot of people, looked at this filing the motion as like, oh, they're doing this great investigative work, this great research. They're really like on their game. They're creating like the ultimate, defense strategy here. And this is all part of it. I personally think it was an act of desperation because they so desperately needed to know exactly what it was that Bethany Funk was going to be testifying to when this went to trial. And I don't think at that time they had a really good grasp on what that was. And I believe that Ann Taylor hired another investigator to file this motion, to write this motion, and to sign his name to it, because she herself, in good consciousness and in the name of her career as an attorney, couldn't do so because she knew it was kind of bullshit herself. You know what I'm saying? So, and thank you, Kevin. I just got that text. Thank you so much. Yeah, and this is a good point that Sherry makes. Sherry says, okay, so they changed the year of the car. And, for the reasons I stated, and I believe that to be true, that they really needed that advanced technology that existed only in Quantico to work through those grainy security camera footages to get the level of detail on that car where they could zero the year of the make of the car. I mean, think about cars you've driven, or I don't know, like, I'm not necessarily a car person, although I just got a car that I've always really wanted. I'm really stoked about it for the first time in my life. I love my car. I've named her Precious. But, I'm not a car person. Some of the differences between, 2020 and 2021 model are very subtle. And when you're looking at security camera footage to detect those subtleties to the point where you can definitively say that there is a difference from this year to the next, it's really very detailed and nuanced. So Mark B says, it is the glove Chris found. I believe it to be as well. How do we know that though, Mark B? I just want to be very precise on that. So Sherry also says, I think they should look into the unknown DNA so it can't be used against them. For all we know, and taking into account all the things that we've already discussed, like, Patrick Larry informing us that if law enforcement does not think that a DNA sample that is found in or around a crime scene is related to the crime, they cannot, in the name of our Fourth Amendment rights, go ahead and pursue processing that DNA sample, which I honestly didn't know that to be true, but I mean, that rings rather true to me, and it very well may be perfectly accurate. So keeping all of that in mind, we still don't know that they very well may have processed those samples. They may have been processing those samples in another or a similar manner to the way that they were processing the DNA sample that was found on the button snap of the knife sheath. But they came to a conclusion regarding the DNA sample that was found on the button snap of the knife sheath that was supported by other evidence that they were in possession of at that time due to the investigation that had been ongoing for, getting close to 2 months at that point, a month and a half, 2 months. We don't know the answers to those questions at this point. So Dwayne says, how did he do the deed and not leave any evidence outside the house in the 10 minutes or less? Also, the sheath has not been proven to be attached to the murder weapon. Well, apparently, from what we understand, and I think that this is rather obvious, sorry, I mean, not rather obvious, like, I'm saying that anybody who didn't come to this conclusion, like, duh. I think that it becomes obvious as we examine the evidence. Just 1 minute, I'm plugging my computer in here. It's telling me it needs some love. Okay, there you go. There's your nutrients, computer. Okay, sorry about that. When I plugged my computer in, it muted. Let's see. Been able to just. So I don't know. I mean, I think that it's a knife sheath that fits the style of knife that is consistent with the injuries that were sustained by the victims. How did he not leave any evidence outside? Well, we do not know that he did not. A lot of people have commented that they think the investigation as a whole, or sometimes at the beginning stages of the investigation, were sloppy. Again, I personally have had varying and ranging opinions on that over time as we learn different things, but my opinion doesn't really matter. Maybe there was evidence outside that was missed by the investigators. One problem that has been indicated by experts and, us talking here on YouTube alike is that the crime scene initially was very limited. It was very small. And then they expanded the crime scene, whereas experts say the best practice in handling a crime scene is to have an encompassing crime scene that is going to pick up any and all evidence that may exist. And as you start to hone in on the nature of the crime, then to close that crime scene in. So what they did in this case was exactly the opposite, which, according to, I guess, our common sense as people who are knowledgeable of true crime, and also according to the experts, that they did that backwards, so maybe there was evidence outside that wasn't found. Another point I guess I want to make is that during one live stream, our channel friend Honeybun was with us. I think it was Honeybun. Yeah, it was Honeybun. And during the live stream, she got us in contact with her uncle, who is a retired detective. And we were, we had the privilege of asking him questions. And, I had to ask that first question: is there any way in hell he could have left that scene and not gotten blood outside or in the car? And him being an experienced detective who had worked on a number of homicides said, it feels like it would be unlikely because you imagine what that scene must have been like. But, absolutely, he felt that it was totally possible. And I have heard other experts echo that same sentiment. Yeah, Brandywine True Crime. I don't know exactly what you're talking about there, but why don't you send that to me and I'd be happy to show it if it's something you guys have been talking about here in chat. So it's wattsobsession@gmail.com. Honey, you can go ahead and eat if you want to, okay? I'm almost done with this, but you can go ahead and eat if you want to. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just one more, guys. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and send that to me, go right ahead. And hey, Capricious RT, how are you doing? Wonderful to see you. Because I was pounding on the keyboard. Was that when I was doing that? I realized I was doing that after the fact. Sorry about that, guys. Hi, Anaphylaxis. How are you doing, sweetheart? Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Each floor had its own washroom. Okay, you know what? I missed that on the first floor. Thank you very much. The Sports Life, welcome. How are you doing? It says, I can't wait until 2025 to know what really happened. I need to know now. Been looking for new information for almost a year now. This show does give out new information than others, though. Oh, thank you. Hey, I really appreciate that. Well, and I do want you to know any new information we give out is not for the sake of giving out new information. It is absolutely, vetted, checked, rechecked. And if it is speculation, I tell you so. If it is sourced, I give you as much detail as I can about the source, given the nature of the gag order and all that. But I very much appreciate that. We, do our best.
Do I leave the broccoli bowl?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. Someone said someone is writing a book already. Who's writing a book? Nope, this definitely is not a drama channel. I don't even know what's going on. I don't need to know what's going on in the way of drama. But nope, this is definitely not a drama channel. Thank you for saying so, Brandywine True Crime. Brandywine, are you sending me that? Are you sending me something? Are you emailing me? Should I go and check my email to pull up whatever it is you guys were talking about? And Deb Tape says, step outside Xana's room, pop into the bathroom, grab a towel, wet it, drop a towel on the floor, wipe feet off. Boom. Yeah, it really might be as easy as that. Stop it. Please talk like How am I not talking like an adult? I was just talking to my child, so maybe that's what you picked up on. No, talking like Valerie. Well, the way I talk is the way I talk. And if you don't like it, you don't need to listen to it. Gone Girl says, I wish everyone could take those great critical thinking skills they have and apply it to the defense's motion. So Dwayne says, whoops, press the wrong thing. If the prosecution hadn't pulled the grand jury stunt and had the preliminary hearing, we would be watching the trial now. Well, it might be the case, but I don't know if it was necessarily a stunt. I mean, that is an option available to the prosecution in the United States, in Idaho specifically, and many people think that the grand jury route is generally the way to go to achieve the highest degree of justice as an outcome in these complex or not complex cases. So, that is definitely an opinion and a debatable point, but it was a readily available. It wasn't a pull it out of, left field stunt. It was a readily available legal avenue that could be explored at any point at that point. Hi, Mike. How are you doing? So let's see. Angel D says, someone on a live said, what if the perpetrator attacked Madison and Kelly between 3 and 3:30 and went back for the sheath between 4 and 4:25 and then attacked Xana and Ethan? Well, I do know that the first time that we see the suspect's car on any video surveillance footage in that neighborhood is 3:29. So, I mean, it is possible that the suspect was in the area at that time and somehow made it to that house, taking a longer part of the route on foot, perhaps, than he did in eventuality. But, you know, I do know that the first time that we saw the suspect's car on any security camera footage was at 3:29. Some crime writer allegedly wrote a book about Kohberger being guilty on Amazon. That's pretty interesting. That's definitely jumping the gun. Oh. It's nothing but compiling only what we know or the rumors. Oh, okay. Well, geez, good for that person. It's not something I want my name attached to. There is currently, are you saying there is currently a book being written by, it's co-written by James Patterson and Vicky Ward, but that's not the one that's out, right? I don't think that'd be, I would hope James Patterson wouldn't do that. You're afraid, hi, let's see, Jetta from Texas, afraid it won't go to trial, plea out or mistrial. My God, I hope that he does not plea. Dude, could you imagine if he took a plea deal, we would all go out of our fucking minds. Could you imagine? We would be Watson it and this would not be good. Okay, thank you. Mark B says 326 Indian Hills Road. Thank you. Okay. Well, I was thinking, okay, all right. So right around that time period. Thank you very much. I like the specificity of your comment. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wow. Yeah, BK is hell bent on a trial. I believe so too. That's the sense I get, but you never know. Yeah, and Patrick Larry also says, I don't see Kohberger taking a plea. It's not his personality, in my opinion. I fully agree. He's going to go out fighting until the end. I definitely agree with both of you. Wow. I think he will take a plea if offered and write a book with Ramstead in 10 years. Well, hopefully, I don't know about this. I hope that Idaho, most states in the union now, and this is a matter that is up to state's jurisdiction, has some kind of a slayer law, you know, being that, you know, if somebody is convicted, including a conviction due to a plea, that they cannot in any way monetarily benefit from, you know, anything that is connected to that crime thereafter, or really anything other than prison wages. So I would imagine that Idaho has something like that. I personally, honestly do not know that, but I certainly hope that they do. Most likely it'll be the most attention that he's ever gotten in his life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I never saw it. Brandywine True Crime, did you respond? Did you send something? I guess I could go check too. Tilly Cat says, didn't they find some medical crime scene booties at BK's apartment? Interesting. I was actually just looking at the return on the search warrant, so we can actually take a look at exactly what was found here. Let me just find which tab that's in. Okay, here it is. Expand this for you guys. So this is a return on the search warrant on Bryan Kohberger's apartment. So let's just take a look at this quickly. One nitrite type black glove. I have 1,000 nitrite type black gloves. They're all different colors in my house. Walmart receipt with one Dickies tag. Marshall's receipt for what we don't know. 4, dust container from vacuum. 5, 8 possible hair strands. 6, 1 fire TV stick with cord and plug. 7 1 possible animal hair strand. 8 multiple different hairs. 9 computer tower. 10 1 collection of dark red spot. 11 2 cuttings from uncased pillow of reddish brown stain, larger stain tested. And 12 2 top and bottom of mattress cover packaged separately with multiple stains. I'll just read the rest of this article. The affidavit previously released provides more information into the investigation that led law enforcement to suspect Bryan Kohberger. Police traced Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra and his phone near the home and after the murders. Kohberger's cell phone had been in the area at least 12 times before the stabbings occurred, and the affidavit says. In a statement made by Sergeant Dustin Baker of the Moscow Police Department in order to obtain the search warrants, Sergeant Baker outlines the sequence of events that transpired the night of November 12th and the subsequent investigation process that led law enforcement to suspect Bryan Kohberger of committing the 4 murders. Sergeant Baker states that after his primary investigation of the King Road residence crime scene, law enforcement began canvassing the area for video footage from the night of November 12th. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of the suspect vehicle number 1, starting at 3:29 a.m. Okay, so that was the right time that I specified, and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings show suspect vehicle 1, a white Hyundai Elantra, make an initial 3 passes by King Road residence and then leaves via the Walenta Drive. Based on my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in that area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this are during this time frame, says Baker. Suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. Police were able to track the movement of the white Hyundai Elantra using multiple cameras throughout the area and watched the suspect vehicle 1 leave town on the road that connects Moscow to Pullman, Washington. Investigators communicated with Washington State University police to be on the lookout for that white Hyundai Elantra, and they were able to find a vehicle that matched the description registered out of Pennsylvania to Bryan Kohberger. Okay, and the rest we know, so I'm not going to keep reading that. Yeah, so that's that. But that was the return on the search warrant at any rate. So no, I didn't see anything about booties. Are any mods here tonight? Mods are here. McJay's here. Suspicious is here. I don't know if Ed is still here. I guess we are a little bit light on mods, aren't we? Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't notice that. Michael, you're a mod, right? Okay. Yeah, Jennifer, this is something that, we've been talking about on this channel for a while that, I think a lot of people don't really think about. So, good logical thought process here. And they absolutely, and, we've discussed this with some experts as well. They absolutely should be able to tell the order of the victims because, victim 1, there would not necessarily be any samples from the other victims found on that body. Victim 2, there would be a sample from victim 1. Victim 3, there would be samples from victim 2 and 1. Victim 4, there'd be samples from victim 1, 2, and 3. So by virtue of doing that analysis and evaluation, they should be able to absolutely tell the order. Where were you last night, Kelly? Where was I? Speaking to me, where was I? I don't know where I was. Oh, last night. I popped into Drunk Turkey Show last night. Is that what you're talking about? Oh, were you talking about that? Were we talking about that last night, Drunk? I was only there for a little bit of it. Is that what you meant? Okay. Oh, okay. I'm not sure. So Angel D says, lots of obsession. How did they not find none of BK's DNA? And well, no, it's not that they didn't find any of BK's DNA in the PA apartment, his office at WSU. It's that it is stated by Ann Taylor through one of the motions that they didn't find any of the victims' DNA in any of those places, right? Yeah. Oh, yes, and Anaphylaxis is here. Thank you, sweetheart. She's a moderator, wonderful moderator. No, Joan was here. Joan's here. Yep. All accounted for. Yeah, another great point, Jennifer. I like the way you think. You would think if you were charged with killing 4 people and you didn't, you wouldn't be playing the games, and you wouldn't be playing games at all, and he is. Absolutely. I think that they met, his house. I think she met his house in Pennsylvania. Okay, great. Awesome. I will be looking for that. I'm going to be actually wrapping up soon because I still have a few things to do before bed. Good for you. I had tacos for dinner last night. Why play games with your life? Absolutely. That is a really great question. I mean, why would you play games with your life? I do not know the answer to that. It seems pretty wild. So let me see here. So since I was referencing them earlier, and I think that there is really a lot of value in looking back to these initial reports. I'm going to be closing out soon, but I'm just going to roll. It's actually going to play most of a video that I uploaded because I love uploading videos and playing them during my live stream so they don't get views, but it's all good. It is a compilation that I made of the most initial reports that I was able to find. And you know what? I think that this is a video where, like, during minute 12 for 30 seconds, I overlaid audio. So if I forget to skip over that, I do apologize in advance. I am a grossly imperfect person. The cat is out of the bag. I know it's disappointing to many people. I can tell from the comments and videos. People think I should be perfect and that I am, but I'm not. Capricious RT says, do you think one person in that short time could have done this? I personally do think it's possible, just based on, I guess, just my own personal thoughts about it, which really don't mean much because I have no experience in committing this kind of thing. But based on everything that I've heard experts say, I've come to believe that yes, it is possible. Oh, thanks, guys. You're so sweet. Thank you. And yes, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's right. Nobody's perfect. I'm just being a little silly. Gosh, people are just, the more controversial cases, the more like hate you get in the comments and things like that. Sometimes it's just crazy. You know what, Jonas, how about that footprint? I actually have been thinking a lot about that recently. How about that footprint? I mean, it's a footprint that was not visible upon first blush, right? They had to use the, I can't remember what it was called, right? The amino black or whatever it is to even identify that it was there. Do they know that footprint contains some degree of blood substance? And if so, do they know that the blood was from one of those victims? And even if so, doesn't necessarily matter. Can they tell how new that footprint was? I mean, could it have been an old footprint? that had blood on it for a number of reasons. I mean, people get hurt, people bleed. If you're a female, certain, things happen every month where there is blood and I don't know, you might be I don't know. There's a number of things that could happen where you could get a large or small amount of blood on your foot, depending on what the situation is, and then walk, right? So isn't necessarily such an anomaly that there would be a footprint of any kind anywhere that had blood on it in a home where 6 people live and that also hosts parties where there is drinking and other kind of party things going on a somewhat regular basis. I mean, I know it has been widely discussed that University of Idaho is, some people say, strangely known for, students getting drunk and falling off of balconies and perishing in that regard. What a terrible tragedy. I do not mean to make light of it. But if people are getting drunk and falling off of balconies and dying, there certainly is a chance that people are getting drunk and cutting themselves and bleeding. So that footprint, in my opinion, does not, on its own, based on what we know right now, carry a ton of weight. Also, the print that was identified on that footprint, the Vans shoes, you can see pictures of almost all of the roommates wearing some type of Vans brand shoe. I've seen it all over the place. I haven't featured any on this channel here because I don't need to. It's almost redundant. It's everywhere. It's a very popular style of shoe for that age group and in that region of the country. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Does anyone have any different opinions on that? Okay, Patrick Larry says, I just saw this. I think it's possible the footprint is old. There you go. And not related unless it's a size 13. That would explain why it wasn't visible without the chemicals. Exactly, Patrick Larry. We were having a very similar thought. People that expect perfection live a miserable existence. And that is so sad. But I mean, I do agree with that. I do. Yeah, I do. Oh, hey, thank you, DB Tabe. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. It never said there was only one footprint, just that there was a footprint outside of DM store. Okay, very good. Yep, we do like the details here, and that is exactly what it said. I guess, see, and this is what our minds do, because you're thinking, well, if there's more than one footprint, certainly that would be stronger evidence, so they would have mentioned that. But we just really don't know. There is so much we don't know. So exactly like Amy Terry said, what we do know is that they said there was a footprint outside of her door, right? So, yeah. It was not a bare footprint. It was a footprint wearing a shoe because they said it was that Vans style pattern of shoe on the bottom, that triangular style, anaphylaxis. I have teenagers. There are 4 pairs of Vans shoes in my house right now. Yes, I know the feeling exactly. Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear on the anaphylaxis. Gone Girl says, I think that I think the one shoe print was to show the direction and proximity to Dylan Mortensen's store. Very possibly, right? Because it was right outside of her door, and they did specify the direction. Yep. More to DoorDash. You think that there's more to DoorDash? Okay, so I'm going to play that video of some of the initial coverage of this case. And I think for me, it was a little bit hard to find. We're talking coverage from November 13th, early November 14th. And then there's also some of the initial statements made by law enforcement in the very first press conference. And yes, everybody, please hit like if you haven't. I very much appreciate it. Probably don't need to hear this intro again, right? Of this channel that covers a number about the University of Idaho tragedy that took a lot of things that we believe that we know about this case, Addison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. So today, September 29th, 2023, there are a lot of things that we believe that we know about this case. When you really start to think about it, it's like, where did I even get that information? Where did I hear that? Is that even real? Or I'm not even sure. So many things have been said about this case. And as we all know, a gag order has been in effect since January 5th, 2023, making real information about this case very hard to come by. So let me give you an example. So, well, it's one of the big ones. Did law enforcement actually say that one of the doors to 1122 King Road was left open? I have heard and seen in, by reading Reddit posts or whatever it may be, so many people debate this topic. Well, we're going to find out the answer to that question in just a couple moments, because in this video, we are going to look back at some of the initial reports that announced to the world something horrible had happened in Moscow, Idaho. So these are the news reports from November 13th, 2022, November 14th, 2022, the initial reports from law enforcement and some of the initial reports from other organizations or even just people close to the tragedy and close to the investigation. Now, initial reports, both have their pros and cons. I guess the con would be when you're trying to release breaking news, you don't put the information through a heavy editing process. And this in itself is both good and bad, right? So sometimes the information comes out a little bit raw, and at times a little later on, the facts need to be adjusted just a little bit, right? But on the other hand, information that comes out in initial reports, I think especially when it's coming from law enforcement, has a very real, raw, and authentic quality to it that gives us a lot of insight into either what's going on in the investigation or what the heck happened in the first place. So first, let's take a look at some excerpts from the first press conference that law enforcement held, which was on November 17th, 2022. Now, during this press conference, Chief James Fry himself even said, yeah, maybe I should have been standing up here a couple days earlier, meaning he should have addressed the community and the world a little sooner than he did. But we're going to give Chief James Fry a break because this was his first time addressing, well, global audience, right?
How many were there?
We believe two.
A little more information on the forced entry. There's no sign of forced entry, but was the door, did it seem like any of the entries were left unlocked by any means?
I'll answer the last part there just because it's at the front end of my mind. We're not 100% sure if the door was unlocked, but there was no damage to anything and the door was still open when we got there.
Well, there you have it. So yeah, law enforcement did indeed say that. So my understanding is that he is talking about this door, the door that would lead into the first floor of the 1122 King Road residence, the first floor on which only roommate Bethany Funk had a bedroom. Is that your understanding of his statement as well? And if he is referring to this door, why do you think it was left wide open? It is also my understanding that when the two surviving roommates and the other people who were in the house when just before the 911 call was made and when the 911 call was made, those individuals exited out the sliding glass door, which makes sense as the victims were on the third floor and the second floor. And, what caused them to flee the house was finding the horrific scenes that existed in the second floor and third floor bedrooms. So it doesn't really make much sense that they would then run down the stairs to the first floor, down that narrow stairway, and then all run out the first floor door, the one that I think was left wide open. It makes much more sense, since they were on the second floor, that they all would have exited the premises through the second floor sliding glass door. What do you guys think?
Oh, there were, sorry, I'm Emma Epperly with this Books Interview. Hi. So there were other roommates who lived at that residence. Were the roommates home at the time of the attack?
There was other people home at that time, but we're not just focusing just on them. We're focusing on everybody that may be coming and going from that residence.
It's really remarkable how many times the press asks about the two roommates during this press conference, other than asking about the suspect himself. It is definitely the question that is at the top of all of their minds.
So since they were home, was it a hostage situation?
No, it was not.
And then they didn't call it into police. So were they injured?
They were not injured. But like I said, we're still following up with everybody that could have been in that area.
One other follow-up. I know you said when the call came in, it was for an unconscious person, and also that was a stabbing. It seems, just from an outside perspective looking in, like that would be not the first thing a person calling in would think.
You're right. But the report that we got was that it was an unconscious individual. It wasn't until our officers arrived on scene, went in to do caregiving check on the individual who was unconscious, that we found the scene that we found.
From an NPR news report dated November 13th, 2022, this is what it reads. Brian Nickerson, a fire chief of the Moscow Volunteer Fire and EMS Department, said police were first to arrive at the home. The first responders from the fire and EMS department didn't go inside or transport anyone from the scene, Nickerson said. So many people have believed that this speaks to the horrific nature of the crime, and also clearly the fact that it was obvious to first responders when they arrived that there were going to be no survivors at that point.
Just to follow up on what she asked, so the other two roommates were there at the time of the attack?
All the information that we have from our investigation is that, yes, they were.
Okay, but they were unhurt.
That is correct.
So is there any explanation as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911? You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. So
Sorry about that, guys. And just had to, I don't know what just happened, but here, sorry about that.
we don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still to try to pull all the pieces together.
Were they one of the people? Were they the 911 caller?
At this point in time, I'm not going to divulge who our 911 caller is, just because I want to keep the integrity of the investigation at this point. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tim with the
But
Daily
rather,
Evergreen. I was just
one
wondering,
of the roommates, Bethany
were
Funk,
the two other
lived or had a
individuals
bedroom
present
on the
at the
first
home
ground
when
floor. There, that's where I overlaid the audio. Okay.
You?
But rather, one of the roommates, Bethany Funk, lived or had a bedroom on the first ground floor of 1122 King Road, as pictured here. And the other roommate, Dylan Mortensen, actually lived on the second floor, the main floor, the floor that had all of the living space, including the living room, the kitchen with the sliding glass door that went out to a little patio, and Xana Kanoto's bedroom, as well as her own.
This hour, we are tracking breaking news. Just a moment ago, Moscow police confirmed 4 people were found dead in a home just steps away from the University of Idaho campus. Right now, we're continuing to work to get more details tonight. We know that students were ordered to shelter in place for a time this afternoon because of the scene's proximity to campus. That order has been lifted. Krem 2 crews traveled down to Moscow as reports came in earlier today. We go now to Janelle Finch, and she was one of the first reporters on scene to talk with police and with neighbors in the area. Janelle.
I've been here in Moscow on scene since about 3 p.m. Since I've been here, I've watched Moscow police cars come in and out of this neighborhood where officials found 4 people dead. Neighbors say they began noticing police cars flood the area around 12 p.m. today. Moscow police say they responded to a call here on King Road for an unconscious individual. Upon further investigation, officials found 4 people dead. While police investigated the scene, the University of Idaho enacted a shelter-in-place alert as university officials reported a homicide near campus. As we've stated, that alert is lifted at this time. Neighbors say most people living in this area are a part of U of I Greek life or are students, but we do not know the identities of those involved or who lives at the residence. Officials are investigating. This is a very much developing situation, and we will continue to stay on the grounds until we have more information to report back to you. Until then, in Moscow, Janelle Finch, Krem 2 News.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And Krem 2 will stay on scene in Moscow throughout tonight, and we'll continue to bring you an update coming up during our 6 o'clock newscast. Thank you so much, Janelle.
So we turn to our Amanda Rowley, who has been at the crime scene all day today. She shared with us earlier that there has been a lot of activity there today. So Amanda, what have you seen today?
Well, at this hour, the crime scene remains very active. This is the most active I've seen in the last few days. Right behind me, we have the Idaho State Police forensics team inside the house. And just within the last hour, I'm not sure if you can see from this angle, but we do want to give some privacy. One of the top floor windows, the blinds have now been open. We can see from a different angle some of the forensics team coming in and out, some wearing plastic white suits, taking photos. Earlier in the day, I did see some flashes, what appeared to come from a camera from inside the home. They're spending all day here collecting evidence and reassessing the home here. Now, earlier today, this afternoon, I did notice the back sliding door to the house was opened at one point today. Now, we could see red markings stuck to the frame of the door. Idaho State Police spokesperson Aaron Snell told me this afternoon it was believed that the potential suspect came through the sliding glass door. But again, there appeared to be no signs of forced entry. Now, he says, again, that forensic team is reassessing the house, looking for any potential additional evidence. In the meantime, he gave me an update on efforts to recreate a timeline of events and how the public will be a huge help in this investigation.
We understand the public's frustration about not being provided a lot of information. We are working to the best of our ability to actually provide as much as possible. We intend to come out and solicit information from the public if they are within certain areas that we believe are of interest for this investigation. And so hopefully today or early tomorrow, we will come out with a map where the victims were at specific times during the night and ultimately ending at their residence.
Now, we also confirmed today the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit is also assisting with the case. They do a variety of things, including crime analysis, create profiles of unknown offenders, offer investigative suggestions, and help with interview strategies there. And ISP is also expecting FBI command vehicle to arrive in Moscow to provide more workspace and additional resources for the investigation. Now, at this time, ISP says the roommates who were at the home during the attack but were not injured are cooperating with investigators. And right now, they are not suspects. They are not considered persons of interest, but ISP says no one is being ruled out in this investigation. Tonight, Snell is insisting that no one has been cleared from this investigation. Giving a quick look back here at this, again, a very active scene with forensics team on scene. Now, just in the last hour, we did get an update from the Latah County Coroner's Office. She weighed in a little bit more on that report that we received with the cause and manner of death. She can't speak right now to the defensive wounds. She doesn't know if the victims were asleep, and the time of death, she says, was sometime early in the morning. Again, they can't specify exactly what time of death because Kathy Mabbutt says it was reported many hours later. And at this point, the coroner says there is no way of knowing who was attacked first. We'll be keeping an eye on this scene through the rest of the week. For now, we'll send it back to you, Mark and Whitney.
All right, Amanda, good information. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. So that's it. So I'm going to get taken off because I've got to be up for work and not too terribly long from now. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, subscribers, members. And hey, if you're not a member or a subscriber, maybe click the subscribe button. You might want to join us again sometime. And mods, thank you so much. You guys absolutely rock. I appreciate all of you big time. And yeah, are you okay, Angel D? I was just like reading a little bit. There was like something crazy going on there. I hope you're okay. Yeah. Let me know if you need anything. You got my email, or I'll give you my phone number if you need anything. Let me know if you need anything. Bye, Mike. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to be doing a live stream on Friday evening for sure. I'm not sure exactly what the topic is going to be yet, but I will be posting it very soon. So I love you guys. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. And everybody, please be safe and make sure you take care of yourself because life is hard and you deserve to be taken care of.